Call to order this District of Clearwater regular council meeting for Tuesday, May 17th at 2 o'clock. I'd like to begin by acknowledging we are fortunate to be gathered today on the unceded territory of the Simpson people who have been caretakers of this land since time immemorial. Are there any late items that anybody on council would like to add to the agenda? Seeing none, can I get somebody to move and second? Moved by Councillor Bamford, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favor of adoption of the agenda? Thank you. Adoption of the minutes. Any errors or omissions? Hearing none, seeing no indication of any. Mover and a seconder on that one, please. Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Haring. All those in favor. We have a public hearing today, which is something we don't usually do here, or doesn't come up that often. So I get to read this preamble for the public hearing. Opening statement for public hearings. This is a reminder to council to put away their cell phone to ensure no further information is being received. The public hearing is this public hearing is being convened under the provisions of the British Columbia Local Government Act to hear submissions related to zoning amendment application number RZ2201, which concerns the official community plan amendment bylaw number 262/2022 and zoning amendment bylaw number 263/2022, which council can find later on in their packages in the agenda. I think it's page 192. Bylaws number 262 and 263 will redesignate the zoning for the southern portion of 230 Sunshine Valley Road, legally described as Lot 1, District Lot 1681, KDYD, Plan EPP 113970, from commercial to country residential. This is the public's opportunity to make representations to council. All persons present who believe their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard. I will ask those members of the public who wish to speak to please commence your address to this council by clearly stating your name. The main function of this public hearing is to listen to your views. Council will not debate the matter of the proposed bylaws with individual citizens, but members of council may ask questions of you following your presentation. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making their views heard. Your only opportunity to comment on the proposed bylaw is during the public hearing, as members of council may not receive further submissions, verbal or in writing, after the close of this public hearing. I'll ask the corporate officer to confirm publication of the notice of public hearing as required by legislation. And if there are any written submissions for council's consideration.
Mr. Mayor, I can confirm the publication went out on May 5th and May 12th. We have no written submission received.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, I'll call for a first time. Is there anyone present who wishes to make a presentation to council on this matter? And if you do, come to the podium, state your name, sign in, and we'll take your submission.
Thank you. I want to address the property rezoning. I live immediately next to it. Oh, Tom Mayland. And is this thing on? Sure. I got to go. Okay, thank you. And the questions I had already been answered by reading this book this afternoon, plus speaking to a proposed future owner of the property. And I think that the rezoning is a very good idea. I commend you guys for saying it so clearly and nicely, and I hope it all passes well.
Thank you for your comments.
You're welcome.
Thank you. If you wish to ask Tom on his presentation of how much he likes this, you can go right ahead.
Because I live next to it and it's currently zoned commercial, and I'd rather have a house or a horse there than a boiler factory or a store.
Thank you for your presentation. I'll call for a second time. Is there anyone present who wishes to make a presentation council on this matter? And for a third and final time, Is there anyone present who wishes to make a presentation to council on this matter? And I don't think we have anybody online. I see Councillor Frizzle and Director Schaefer on there who are monitoring the meeting, so we'll go with that. There being no further speakers, I declare this public meeting closed. Thank you. And we move back to the regular agenda. Which now I have to figure out what I did with that page. Oh, right. Up next is a presentation by George Briscoe of the Wells Grey Community Forest. George, come on up and we'll take the microphone and put it right back where it was before.
Thank you.
And I'll just ask online if those online to be sure that you can hear George speaking. If you can't, please pipe up.
I can hear him fine.
I haven't spoken yet, Lynn. Just kidding. So I really appreciate you guys giving me the audience to give you a brief update on the Wells Grey Community Forest. I've been the general manager for 16 years now, so been with the community forest since the start. So we're really happy to go into our 4th 5-year cut cycle. So we're just starting our, like I said, our 16th year. So as you know, we have an office here. We publish an annual report, which I'm glad you see in front of you guys. I'm going to skate over that report. There's a lot of detail there we won't have time for. So if you have any questions, I'm in the building. We have a website. I have my address there, so you can ask me those questions later if you will. Okay. There are a number of objectives set for community forests that we are adhered to and follow to. They range from foster worker safety programs to using profits to support rural communities like we live in. It's a diverse resource that can be used for many things. Our highlights of last year, essentially, as I said, we finished our 3rd 5-year cut period. Log markets were extremely high in 2021. We did a number of harvesting in the Wells Grey Outdoor Club's recreation trails that you might have heard about, directly in the mountain bike trails network. We were involved in a number of community groups. We produced a documentary, which is on our website. Our website is currently being redone to make it more accessible for public and make it more user-friendly for grant cycles and that type of thing. Because as you know, we do 2 grant cycles per year. So we post a lot of that information on the website, okay? Over the last year, we've engaged with a number of students from UBC and just starting to engage with people from TRU on the fire science side of things for the community as well. Okay, we're about 13,500 hectares. That's the size of our community forest. As you know, we manage your guys' watersheds for you. So at the end of our 5-year cut control, we give ourselves a report card. We ask for a professional hydrologist to come in and review all our road building and all of our blocks that we've done. And we keep a table going on what we've cut and what is recovering to ensure that we're basically staying within a sustainable rate of cut in the watershed. So extremely important, obviously. A number of other activities that we've done in the watershed is continue to replace pipes to get ready for big events, spring freshet. There'll be a big melt this year, right? We've got a lot of snowpack this year, hasn't come off yet. The pipes at the bottom of the hill sometimes are the most important. They receive a lot of energy from that whole watershed system. So we want to make sure that we're looking at that in the eyes of climate change. Okay. We had a small program last year because we finished, as I said, our cut opportunity. So we logged 15,695 meters last year. Logs were delivered to Interfor Gilbert Smith. The yard and barrier there takes an oversized log, so that was done as well. We logged in the Candle Creek Recreation area, like I said, and we also logged in Spahats Creek area, Road 80. We use local contractors as usual. That is part of our mandate to use local contractors. The work does not go out of town. And they completed our program with a high degree of safety. Okay. We are in the process right now of removing 2 bridges in East Blackpool, problem bridges, and we're putting in pipes, basically a 2,300 pipe, so you can stand inside this pipe. So we're removing an old structure and doing that, again, in the face of climate change, that type of stuff. We feel that one of our biggest assets that we manage, the public's assets, are the local roads. Brushing, as I say, managing them for climate, for safety. There's a couple of roads that are troublesome close to town, and we're putting a lot of work into those, along with our annual brushing program. Our planning world, we had a number of large documents expire this year. Our forest stewardship plan, which outlines all the objectives that the government sets for us, so that had to be redone. We're under the one cutting permit system. It gives us huge flexibility in where to move within our license, and that's a 4-year granted term. So that it's a really big asset for the community forest. And in 2020, we acquired LiDAR, which is it's a flight that's completed in a fixed wing aircraft, and it basically measures the heights with laser to give the most accurate height. So we improved our inventory information, which sets how much we're allowed to cut each year. So we tried to apply the most restrictive calculations to make this community forest sustainable, not to keep cutting ahead of the future, right? So really trying to look at that. That was a huge goal of us this year, to make sure that we're actually cutting correctly. I know that sounds a little bit silly, but I don't think the bigger world is really doing that well out there. We're running into a lot of issues with timber supply and stuff. So we're trying to take our fixed little area base and make that very realistic. Okay. I was gonna say, currently we're planting trees. We're using McLennan Contracting. We're doing about 300,000 trees locally this year. We're planting the block on Road 80, and we're planting a couple of blocks in the bike trail network, along with a number of blocks in East Blackpool. Okay. We are continuing to use fertilization at the time of planting. So it's a tea bag that you put in the same hole. So on poorer sites, this is what we would want to do to try and help with the competition from veg and just poorer soils, microsites, that type of stuff. As I said, part of our social license is reporting out to the public. So we produce an annual report. I thank you again for allowing me to address you folks today. I had my public meeting last week. Only about 15 people came. That's pretty typical for our town. So we'll continue to be patient. Yeah. Yeah, so we're working on our website. I really hope that will draw more people in. It'll have our film on there too, our documentary. So just want to open it to the floor for you guys to ask me questions, if anything.
Any questions? I got to ask all my questions last week at the AGM and got the free donuts or cookies or whatever. So Councillor Bamford, go ahead.
Not really a question, George, just a compliment on your presentation and a compliment on the community forest. It's a huge part of the community.
It is.
Over the years, it's benefited the community in multiple ways to multiple organizations. And getting the LiDAR and protecting your inventory is a really good step.
Yeah.
It really is, because you're right, so many places have had a fall down because they didn't have the proper inventory.
Yeah.
But it's a good place to be. So
Yeah, thanks very
good
much.
on you.
Yeah, we're up to $5.5 million that we put into the community now, surplus profits from a sustainable managed license, right? Big piece. One other important thing that I wanted to mention is the fuel mitigation. So operating within the wildfire interface area, Gill Creek, we now have a landscape fuel break of 70 hectares adjacent to the hydro line that has been fuel managed. So that is another one of our large goals over time, is to create these landscape fuel breaks around the community to try and aid in the wildfire when it becomes a reality. We learned from places like Logan Lake last year. They are a community forest. They did a lot of field management. It made an impact on their community last year. So that's a goal.
Further questions?
Well, I just want to echo Councillor Banford said there and just pass on, I was down at Kofi there a couple weeks back and I don't have her card on me, but I believe Tracy Andrews, is that who worked with her? Just had a lot of good praise to pass on for you coming from their end of things.
Great. Thanks. Awesome.
Sim.
Yeah, echo all of that. However, my question is, what are your thoughts about some of the government legislation that's coming down, and what kind of an impact might that have for community forests and the community? Like, what are we looking at ahead?
Yeah. So one of the big topics, of course, is the old growth deferral layer, right? Just talking context of our community forest. As I said, we're about 13,500 hectares. We have always had spatially located old growth management areas to the tune of 1,300 hectares in our license. So a bit of local management, our local forestry government forest office sort of having that vision ahead of time, if you will, locking those areas down because they're rare ecosystems or what have you. So that was already ours. We had another 500 hectares added. So it's not as a big impact as you're seeing with major licensees and other community forests. We've been given it the opportunity as a community forest to create our own strategy though within that layer. So it sort of holds to the tune that we are different. We can do different things. We go a lot slower. We can do different planning. So we're allowed into those layers, if you will, on the planning context already. So it's a positive thing for our community forest. With Simp adjacent to us, they are very forthcoming as well. They have a license in the same area. They want to utilize that license. We're going to develop strategies as the ultimate goal with each other. So really that helps us draw together as well.
So supplemental to that is the one thing that we are seeing is because of the high rates, and you've alluded to it, there's a lot of very aggressive practice out there right now.
Yeah.
A lot of movement going across the border, almost like an anticipation
Yeah.
of something. Do you see that, the major licensees and maybe some of their potential movements having an impact on the local area? And does that leave room for more of a community economic development concept of how we go back to processing locally?
Yeah, it's if you will, the last slice of pie, right? And it's being divvied up. It's going quick. Yeah, that's reality, I guess, with our high cut control numbers still set for major licensees. I think that we need to make some planning now ahead of when it slows right down in 10 years or 15 years. The community forest will still be here. That's why we're trying to get ahead of that scenario. But yeah, locally, there's been a lot of ideas tossed around of how we can build legacy basically with the community forest funding, or just start thinking about that ourselves. Maybe another mill might not be the way to go, but maybe a waste utilization or something like this. We've introduced a number of ideas in the community forest working group with the district. So we're going to pursue some of that stuff. I think there's opportunity. And because the industry is, going not to the end, but slowing down, that's where the small tenures are getting recognized and the important role they play in small communities. So, but we need to get ahead of that, out in front of that story for sure.
Anything further for George? Okay. Fire. I have a comment at the end, but go right ahead.
Okay, if you've got, yeah. And just lastly, is we saw Simp and they were quite, out there in the community with a lot of different firewood options. I don't know if community forest has got that same opportunity or, oh, well,
Yes.
then could be in your
We-
comments. Well,
Yeah,
that's
so we're-
great.
Yeah, so firewood, right?
Well, that's the question is
Yeah.
how do we get to need without having to,
Yeah, I think within town, there should be someone that starts a firewood business that we could help them support, right? People are getting their own firewood from the community forest and they're dropping wildlife trees and doing all kinds of wild stuff out there. So yes, another piece to get ahead of, Lower North Thompson Community Forest has an official firewood program within their business. We don't do that here yet. We could make some dry wood available if someone had a business, but It's been talked about. Community forest is not starting a firewood yard where you go in and start bucking and see what happens kind of thing. So it has to be very controlled if it's on a commercial side, right? So I think it's an opportunity in town that someone should take a hold of, and we could help support.
It's almost like an opportunity for fundraising or anything like that.
Yeah.
You've really catalyzed a lot of.
Yeah, and if we can combine it with fuel management, utilization of slash and grinding, low value product, then possibly. And that might be a step into the fuel management in public land, right? The Fire Smart program, right? If there was a buyer for that slash and that debris, maybe that would get a lot of people into the game. And then we could start that whole concept, grinding and firewood.
We're lucky to have you at the helm. Thank you.
Sorry.
Well, that question basically took all my comments, which is good, but yes, the whole concept about promoting Fire Smart, the ability to potentially take waste and wood off of private land and grind it, remove it from the community, so it's not just spewed on the ground, and then to create a firewood stream for local residents, because that has been a huge issue that's doing damage to the surrounding tenures, not just to the community forest, but everybody. And I know what a wildlife tree looks like as a former wildlife tree danger assessor, and I see them going down all the time, so I feel for you. Barry, one more quick one.
Yeah, just real quick. I was gonna mention this in my report, but I'll mention it now for council benefit. In the forestry working group meeting, we talked about a little bit about our role as council go for advocacy. And I think George will confirm this. The one thing right now the council could do to benefit the community forest the most is advocate for maintaining the consistent rate structure, which they have now. That's the biggest risk to the community forest right now. The government's looking at changing the rate structure for them, and they have a specific structure to benefit communities. So if that's the one point I think that's the most beneficial for them and for us, and the mayor knows that and can take that forward. So
Yeah, so I have a document I'm hoping for UBCM, right? That I could get some support, and we'll return to that conversation, but it's asking the district to recognize the value of their community forest and helping us uphold our rates, right? Everything is changing in the world, as you know, and they're talking about possibly changing our rate structure, which that's how we generate. We get 80% off of what other people pay for stumpage. That's where we generate our money.
Yeah, no, I understand it. It's basically, we'll get some information, the ability to create a motion to bring forward to UBCM about maintaining the tabular rate structure, which is what needs to happen right now. If they switch away from the tabular rate structure, my understanding, listening to George and to others, basically takes away the money that is generated for our community that goes out to grants, et cetera, et cetera.
So on that, are you also suggesting that we join with other communities like Logan Lake who have got community forests? Because it's a unique, not all communities have what we have.
That's right.
So we're one of a few, but we
Yeah.
do have a few. Are you suggesting that we work with other communities to garner that support or go forward independently?
Independently, and each community with the community forest will have that same message, we're hoping. So we will all come to the higher level power there with the messages and show in multiple communities the value, right? Eventually, we're going at that as well, but it's sort of to drive it from each individual community as well.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. The third time I've heard it in the last few days, but it's always something that we can learn more on for sure. So thank you. And council has any questions, as George says, he's down the other end of the hall. Go pick his brain anytime you want. You'll learn lots more. Thank you. Up next, we have a delegation from the RCMP with Sergeant Grant Simpson for the fourth quarter report of 21-22. Come on down. Next contestant.
I think all of you have a copy of my PowerPoint. If you want to just follow through with me. It is my pleasure again to report to Mayor and Council for the fourth quarter of 2021-2022. This report covers the period from January 1st to March 31st of 2022. And it is my pleasure again to report that we are currently operating at 100% strength. Finally, This means that we have myself, the detachment commander, one corporal, who's a supervisor, and 4 constables working full-time. Last August, we were finally able to replace Corporal Mark Labossiere after his retirement back in July 2020. Well, he actually retired in December, but he had a whole bunch of leave that he used up from July. So essentially, he was gone from July 2020. If you haven't already met Corporal Duncan McGeorge, I'm sure that you will sometime soon, as he is very community-minded. He and his wife Caitlin stay very busy raising their young daughter within the community. Duncan's wife is also establishing her successful mortgage brokering business as well within the community. And I think she's working closely with Melissa Hall. As most of you, I'm sure, are aware, Constable Cody Lockwood took a transfer to Kamloops Detachment and worked his last shift here back in December 15th. He'd been commuting from his home in Kamloops to work here, staying in town for his block of shifts in a small rental unit. We already miss him and his fantastic work ethic. A replacement from Kamloops Detachment, who is a longtime local resident here, having grown up here in the area, has slid into Constable Lockwood's position. Some of you may know Constable Lane Tobin. Like Constable Lockwood, Constable Tobin had been commuting to work in Kamloops from his home in Vavenby. So having him transfer to Clearwater just made sense, and it was virtually seamless. He's fit right in. Fantastic part of the team, and I'm sure, like I say, most of you know who he is. We've also been able to utilize our district's fairly new provincial support team to help fill our scheduling gaps when necessary. We're fortunate enough to have 4 officers in Kamloops that we can draw from as the need arises. We continue to work collaboratively with the renamed BC Highway Patrol members. They were formerly, we referred to them as traffic services. They work from our office and they reside in the community. In the past, we had staffed 3 public service employees who provided the detachment with administrative support. However, through some recent restructuring and an increase in hours, we now have 2 covering a staggered full-time schedule. And again, as usual, we rely heavily upon our numerous volunteers, which include victim services, an interagency case assessment team, our 1 auxiliary member who has unfortunately been put on hold until the province determines what direction to take with their auxiliary constable program. We also continue to work in partnership with other frontline emergency service providers such as the local fire departments, BC Ambulance, search and rescue, conservation officers, and TMX security personnel. So getting into the stats, and I know this can be dull sometimes, but our 4th quarter calls for service. So total number of calls for service in the Clearwater Detachment jurisdiction during the 4th quarter of January 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2022 was 475. During that same quarter last year, the total was 378. In 2020, the total was 323. 2019 was 355. 2018, 356, 2017, 384. So a bit of an increase, and you can see that on the graph if you're looking at it there. The monthly calls for service for the Clearwater Detachment area were as follows. In January, we had 177. 2021, we had 121. 2020, 127. 2019, 129. 2018, 135, and so on. Again, a slight increase. February 2022, we had 151. 2021, we had 114. 2020, 94. 2019, 101. 2018 was 103. So fairly consistent until this past year. March 2022 was 147. 2021 was 143. 2020 was 101, 2019, 120, 2018, 118. Again, a bit of an uptick there. Our year-end file count, so total files for the year were 2,605. In 2020, it was 1,000. 751. In 2019, it was 1,915. In 2018, 1,932. So a bit of a jump there over the years. And broken down by area, in electoral area A, in Clearwater, we had 219 calls for service, which amounts to approximately 44% of our total call volume for the fourth quarter. Birch Island, we had 23 calls for service, which is about 5%. Blackpool, we had 59 calls for service, which amounts to about 12% of the total call volume. Vavenby, 44 calls for service, which is about 9%. In electoral area B, Avola, we had 24 calls for service. Again, it's about 5% of the total call volume. Blue River, we had 51 calls for service, which is about 10%. And then the remaining outlying areas accounted for 54 calls for service, which is about 15% of our total call volume. And then we break it down into call types. And as usual, service delivery this quarter centered around a high number of traffic related incidents on our roadways, which accounted for roughly 70% of our call volume this quarter. This is up quite a bit from last year and last quarter. Our traffic calls include suspicious vehicles, collisions, impaired driver investigations, and so on. 9% of our calls were related to persons offenses. These include assaults of all sorts, uttering threats, sex crimes, harassment, and so on. Provincial statute investigations such as bylaw or liquor complaints amounted to 4% of our files. 12% of our investigations were property related. These files include arsons, break and enters, thefts, frauds, and mischief. And a minuscule 1% of our investigations were drug related, and other criminal code investigations accounted for 4% of our calls during this past quarter. Other criminal code files would include breach of conditions, cause of disturbance, weapons offenses, and so on. We've seen a significant increase in traffic related files since the work on Trans Mountain has increased. So we'll get into our detachment priorities. And as noted earlier, we are now considered to be working at 100% when it comes to general duty policing. As such, members are still able to target our detachment priorities, though at times we'll experience some limitations, such as COVID. And, we've run into a few roadblocks there. The members continue to work on these initiatives with a view to reducing local crime trends and increasing police visibility and activity within the community. Last quarter, the detachment priorities were targeted as such. Firstly, we had enhanced road safety. This was speeding, impaired, and distracted driving. During this fourth quarter, a review of our filing system indicates we had 2 injury and 35 property damage collisions in the Clearwater detachment area. Working collaboratively with BC Highway Patrol, we have documented 187 traffic contacts over the past 3 months. This equates to an average of 23 contacts per member during that period. So breaking it down even further, roughly 8 contacts per member each month. And these included 4 impaired operational motor vehicle investigations and 2 distracted driving fines and warnings, among others. Number 2, the second priority is to prevent and reduce the incident of crimes involving youth, typically internet safety. This past quarter, our target was not quite met for this priority, due in large part to a shortage of resources. Members are cognizant of this initiative and make efforts to contribute to it when time and opportunity permit. When opportunity permits, they attend the local schools and youth groups in uniform and while off duty to provide presentations, visits, and coaching sports or whatever. Our third priority was to reduce crimes against persons, and that was to reduce domestic violence. Again, a review of our files indicates that of 27 crimes against persons investigation were reported during the fourth quarter, only 2 of them were domestic in nature, for a total of 8 over the past 12 months. This puts us just over our target reduction from 8 to 6. This number is still respectable when compared to previous years when they were as high as 18. Our ICAT continues to meet on a monthly basis and has been effective in sharing information with partnering agencies and providing support to victims of domestic violence. Our fourth priority was crime reduction, and this is keeping track of prolific offenders and by doing curfew checks and increased drug seizures. At the beginning of this quarter, Clearwater had 3 reportees, which has now increased to 4. Members routinely conduct and document their curfew checks upon these individuals on prime files created to capture and document this information. We had also coordinated with the provincial fugitive return program to successfully return 2 prolific offenders back to their home province of Ontario to deal with outstanding charges there. And just to break down some of the offenses in our crime reduction priority, we had 0 thefts from motor vehicles, which was a decrease from the last quarter. We had only 1 theft of a motor vehicle reported. This is also a decrease from the previous quarter. We had 10 mischief investigations, which is a slight increase from last quarter. 1 break-in and enter investigation, which again was a decrease from the previous quarter, and 2 drug seizures, another decrease from the last quarter. Our fifth and final priority was police and community relations, and this is our visibility within the community. And although the pandemic continues to have some impact upon our detachment contacts, members still make efforts to get involved in a number of community events. Time for involvement was also limited by resourcing issues and pipeline protester activities. Members assigned to schools are reconnecting with staff and students despite the current situations. The detachment was able to be involved in several community events. Back in December, the detachment sponsored a local senior in need and also conducted a Cram the Cruiser event in which we collected 1,200 pounds of food and $1,500 in cash donations for the local food bank. And that's just one small example. And seasonal policing. Our summer seasonal policing initiative will soon be put into place and will be utilized for summer patrols of some of our more remote recreational areas. Additional provincial funding remains in place to address any protest groups that oppose the TMX pipeline project, such as the Tiny House Warriors. Oh, did I say their name out loud? Shouldn't say that. They remain encamped in Blue River. This additional funding provides us with an increase of police presence in and around the area when members of our CIRG, which stands for Community Industry Response Group, will again, hopefully, start patrolling the Trans Mountain Expansion Project from Merritt to Valemont. Although they are set up to work out of various detachments along this corridor, they are usually based out of our detachment or out of Kamloops. These additional resources were a significant asset and assisted our already very busy units last year. And we're hoping and looking forward to their support again this year. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to present to you. I should just add on that note, it's not just CIRG members that we draw from, but we also have a tactical team that I'm attached to, that Staff Sergeant Begg is attached to, that also deploy resources up to Blue River to assist with the protesters there. So, yeah.
Thank you for your report. I see Councillor Haring already has his hand up. Use your mic, sorry.
So I was curious with the increase in traffic files that you guys are noticing,
Yeah.
has that been corresponding with the increased amount of construction zones around
yes.
Clearwater?
Yes, very much so.
Have accidents increased in any way, shape, or form with construction zones?
Not related to construction, no.
No.
Typically, the accidents that we're dealing with are single vehicle MVIs that are people usually not paying attention to how they're driving or, yeah, distracted driving. So,
There's just a personal grudge I have with the
Oh, for
provincial
sure.
management of it. There are too many speed zones.
yes.
And I mean, obviously you guys got to enforce them, but it's our province that's making ridiculous work safe
Yes.
requirements for these access sites.
Yeah. Yeah.
Frustrating.
Any further questions? Councillor Sim?
I really want to thank you so much for the increase in the traffic situation. I'm often late now, so thanks a lot. Um,
It sounds like there's a story there.
and avoidance. Anyway, but great crew, great crew. I am curious about if you have noticed an increase in homelessness.
I can't say that we have nothing that
It's been reported,
that's been reported to us directly. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
The one fellow that was living here has moved on. I'm not sure where he's gone, but there is another fellow that's.
Yeah, I just wondered, there's just sort of been different sort of reports of different camps sort of around the community.
Right.
But it seems that it's been quite a quiet
Yeah.
addition to the community. So obviously nothing that's
Nothing
on
that's
your.
really come to our attention. other
Right,
than-
it's just
yeah.
a good indication is there's pressure points in our communities around us as if there is and, you know,
Yeah.
some movement within our community and just to be alert to that and what that
100%.
might mean. But it seemed to be good that the property numbers weren't off the charts for that.
No, not at all.
So I think having the full complement has made a big difference.
Oh,
Uh,
I can't tell you how much of an impact that has on our work. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
There further comments or questions? Okay, seeing one, do we have one online? Anybody online? No. Not yet. Anyways, yes, thank you for that. I was out late designated driving and saw two people at the same time pulled over, getting administered roadside tests for sobriety, and was very impressed at seeing that because that shot across the bow is much appreciated. And yeah, and echoing Councillor Sim's comments on homeless camps and stuff, seeing some of the stuff that happened down around Big White
Mhm.
in the bush there. It's always great to keep an eye on that stuff because the wrong conditions that can get out of hand and leave quite a lot of mess for local community volunteers. But it's also great to hear that you're not seeing
Yeah.
that visible,
Oh, no.
considering the amount of extra people we have in town,
Mhm.
the level of problems, that's quite exceptional. It is not what I expected to hear. So congratulations to you and Trans Mountain Security and everybody, all the partners that you're working with at this
Thanks.
particular point. Thank you. Well, have a good day and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
And you know, I don't know about this haircut, but you know, we'll get used to it. It'll grow on you. Yeah, we might call you Corporal Chia here in a couple of weeks here, but it's all good. Sorry. No, never mind. I maybe started a nickname that you don't want. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Moving back to the agenda, item 11, Mayor's Report. I sent this out to Council via email today. Quickly, TNRD on the 5th of May. The 6th was Joanna Hurst's 39th birthday for the 6th time. Went to a concert for the first time in a long time, which was fantastic. Didn't catch COVID at that event, which is a miracle. Agenda setting for a couple of meetings, including the special one. The 12th was Interior Health Mayors and Chairs Zoom, and a lot of focus was on setting up cooling centers and things like that. There's a lot of guidelines from Interior Health available on their website, something that we should probably look into in partnership with Yellowhead. Doesn't seem like we're going to have a hot summer at this particular point, but it's a good planning exercise to add to our toolbox because you know, we do have this center with kitchens and bathrooms and things like that. On the same day, met with Doug Garland, who is the new BC Ambulance Service Regional Manager. Had a good conversation about where they are at as far as need for ambulance attendants. They are still struggling with that. Special council meeting on the 12th. Friday the 13th was very busy. Forestry Working Group. I'll let Councillor Bamford talk about that. Did burgers at the high school. Super fun. Smelled completely of hamburger grease for like 2 days on all my clothes, but the kids were awesome, and I only fed 1 or 2 people a raw hamburger, so I did fairly well on that. My core competency is still cooking burgers apparently and nothing else. I spent Friday writing nominations for a couple local citizens that you can probably figure out for Queen's Jubilee medals for service and volunteerism. Saturday, first responders dinner at the Legion, excellent dinner. Lots of great turnout, everybody in uniform, lots of pride in the room for that one, and they really need air conditioning in there. Last night, attended the Economic Development Task Force meeting, low turnout, but excellent conversation and lots of ideas to move forward with, and it's great to have Wiley there. Starting to set things in motion that will start to get us the information we need back to start making decisions and also get awareness back and forth, a conversation going back and forth in the greater community. I also note on there for council that I have an invite to Kathy McLeod's retirement party on June 11th. If anybody wishes to go, I have a conflict. That's it for my report. Moving on to Councillor Bamford.
Thank you, Mayor Blackwell. Pretty small agenda for me this time, but I did attend the agenda setting for the special council meeting with the CEO and the mayor. Attended the forestry working group. Really good conversation, pretty good turnout, a lot of conversations on a lot of different points. I brought up the issue of the rate structure already. Quite a bit of discussion about firewood, which Mr. Briscoe spoke to. Old growth is going to have an impact. There's no question, especially with the major licensees. Doesn't seem to be a lot of movement there and opportunities to change any of that, but it's going to have an impact, but not so much on the community forest as mentioned. And a bit of discussion, quite a bit of discussion around some options, maybe with regards to the coming fire season, if it builds up that way. I do know a little bit of information in relationship that there have been some rooms reserved for initial attack crews to be placed here if the hazard reaches a certain level for up to a 5-week period. Not permanently stationed here, but at least there is that, which is a positive thing. That they have look at if it hits a certain hazard rating, they will place some here in motels. So overall, it was a good meeting and fairly well attended. And I've been working with the cemetery committee to do some scheduling changes around our meetings due to a conflict that I have. That's pretty much my report.
Thank you. Councillor Frizzle is online.
Thanks, Mayor Blackwell. I attended the Tourism Oils Gray meeting on the 4th, which is a really interesting meeting. Stephanie got us up to date on all the things that she's getting tied up as she's leaving us on June 3rd, I believe. She's done a lot of work in the Visitor Information Center and got a lot of staff going. And I talked to her earlier this week and they had a get together and sort of training session. And they actually got to train with some actual tourists because they walked into the center while they were in training. So they got to actually perform live and in person. So that was good for them. So it's going to be really sad to see her go, but she's really done a lot of work to get things where the new person, whoever that will be, can just take over, hopefully. On the 12th, I attended the special meeting along with the rest of council, and then after that walked across the hall and went to the Moose Hide campaign, which was very well attended, and it was a very good session. Mr. Thomas was an MC and he did a great job, and we even had a Jeopardy game we were playing, so quite a lot of fun and very moving and a very special night. On the 16th, last night, we had the task force meeting, as the mayor said, and there was lots of good information that came out. It's really good to have Wiley here. She will be moving forward on everything because that's her job. It's not just something that's on this side of her desk. So I'm excited to see what's going to develop from there. And just as a side note, I just wanted to say I went to Sagebrush Theater on Saturday, and it was The Wizard of Oz. And the entire set was made of recycled materials. And it was the most amazing sight. The Emerald City was just, everything they just did so well. It just made you feel it was there. It was all recycled, and it's amazing what you can do when you use a little creativity. And I just wanted to put that out there. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. I might try to sneak in for that. Councillor Haring.
Not much to report on, but one thing I have been picking up a lot in the last couple weeks is bear activity. It's all over the info board and everybody I talk to. I'm certainly dealing with it myself. I'm wondering, maybe if we couldn't find a way to message what the right thing to do is when you're dealing with a problem bear in town, because I think there's two competing bits of advice I consistently hear, and one is call conservation and the other is shoot, shovel, shut up. And so maybe some good information about that should be shared so people know what the right thing to do is and don't trust that kind of option B. Yeah, yeah.
Option B. Yeah, I think it's still wild safe BC, and there's probably a way to maybe do some of that a little bit late on our newsletter, but definitely well, maybe not actually, for our Facebook page and other channels. Councillor Bamford, did you have a direct comment on that?
Following up on that, we had the local bear in the Robson area, the fire department there, going down our cul-de-sac yesterday at about 6 o'clock with a neighbor chasing him, shooing him out of the way. Yeah. And all the way down through somebody else's backyard, down, and then ended up going down towards the high school. But it was reported. So one thing is you keep reporting them to the conservation officer, those bears, because it was going in someone's garage that was open and up on their front porch. Yeah. So it was time to report it. So hopefully they'll come and set up a trap, which is an option. So thank you for bringing it up, but there are options.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? Like, what is the point where it's a dangerous bear and what is normal is a big thing, because a lot of people here from other environments don't understand that.
I think reporting is the best option at this particular point and the only legal one. But yes, I mean, there's also an education point that by reporting it, conservation officer drives around, notices things like trash and things like that out, and does an education thing with human beings. Yes, and we, as we used to refer to it, nobody needs to end up in the great gravel pit in the sky. So there we go. Anything further, Councillor Haring? Okay. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mayor Blackwell. Not a lot to report here these last couple of weeks. I did attend special council meeting on May 12th, and I am waiting for some phone parts to show up so I can get all my slides and everything from Kofi transferred over. So hopefully by the time this next meeting here in a couple of weeks comes around, I should have everything for that, as I lost it all.
Ooh,
so
fun. Yeah. But
And,
it was a good.
It was a really good conference.
Yeah.
Shorter. Last time I was down there, they did 5 days. That's a little excessive.
Yeah.
3, well, I guess 2.5 really. Much more accommodating for everyone, I think. And there's about 800 people in there this time around. So busy place, first time back after a couple of years, and it was good. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, everything will be back in order and
Perfectly fine
here. Other than that, a lot to talk about the hospital, which I'm sure is going on everywhere. You see Merritt's going through it now. Royal Inland, I mean, if you got a major center that close and you're losing a pediatric ward over a weekend, something's got to be done. So yeah, that's the buzz around. A lot of the people I've been talking to is about that. So hopefully we can see progress coming up soon.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think we're all hearing pretty much the same thing. I do have a tour with Director Schaefer, who's online here, on Thursday of the new hospital tower in Kamloops, which my understanding is they probably don't have any staff for. Yeah, so exactly. It's kind of a scary thing. And yes, every town within the TNRD is beating that drum. I think everybody that has a voice in this is beating that drum, as Councillor Sim will tell you in her report, just hearing the broader conversation as well. So, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. And I look forward to the Kofi report whenever you get to it. Councillor Sim.
Thanks very much. So we'll certainly lead into the hospital discussion in just a sec. But first of all, just to echo Councillor Frizzle's comments about all the effort that goes into the Moose Hide campaign. Really, it is an important day, and not to be unnoticed about how much work that is. And there was a couple of significant events that week. So a big appreciation to those organizers. On the bear situation, what I would be curious about is, are we seeing some increased traffic of bears just because of the cold spring? And I just asked that question in the spirit of the education process of where those natural sort of habitat pathways take them, and are they looking elsewhere? It's just an inquiry there as to why, and to be careful about that. So, and then a final shout out to the crews in Clearwater because the numbers keep growing. 15,500 to the food bank, and just an outstanding event. So I think it's just worth repeating that how powerful that event is. So last weekend, Council had very kindly sponsored attendance to the Rural Healthcare Conference, which was held in Penticton. This conference was specifically geared to anybody working or planning to work in rural healthcare programs. So there was over 300 physicians, graduates, medical students, a lot of different partners. I've left on your desk the promotional piece that we came up with for that. And it was really interesting to see who was also at that show. At our booth, we engaged over 50% of the participants. What we did is we invoked a trivia contest. So the best trivia question, as far as I was concerned, was which community has a hungry hiker, a strawberry moose, and a wild flower? So that certainly got people thinking that there. Just to sort of echo what's going on, not just in our community, the TNRD, but certainly the province at large. We've heard the stats, 900,000 people in BC don't have a doctor. What has been recent is the fact that the physician shortage has finally hit Victoria with a force that has finally garnered some attention. I'd like to say welcome to the party, Victoria. Nice to have you at the table. Because this is just a provincial discussion that is not going to go away, and it's going to be invigorated. And I share that because if we are going to really take part in this discussion, our recruitment and retention efforts now need to start yesterday, and they need to be speeded up quite quickly. It is going to be a fierce competition for new graduates. The amount of senior doctors who are now retiring is going to be significant and in numbers that we haven't seen before. Why is that important? Is because a lot of these older physicians also acted as preceptors, which means that they were the trainers. And we saw Dr. Souls do that a number of times. And in fact, that's how Dr. Purdue has landed here as a result of that type of mentorship. Clearwater doesn't have that right now. So we once again fall to a bit of a disadvantage, which is why it's really important we take to the stage and say, all right, so that model may be over. What's the new format? And Clearwater has always sort of led that charge, and I hope we can do that again. So as I said, the recruitment race is going to be real, and those who are prepared will be best positioned. And the recruitment effort isn't just for more physicians, but in all aspects of healthcare, including nurses, lab techs, x-ray technicians, care aides, and more. School District 73 has to be involved in this conversation. They have tomorrow's workforce. We continue to call it trades and transitions. I'm pretty sure that we can widen that terminology and start highlighting different opportunities. And I hope we as a council can, really further that and cement that even at our local high school when we're doing things like Core Competency Week, because there was a lot of variety and opportunities there, but I don't think healthcare was one of them. And yet we are in crisis in lots of different areas. Michael, do you have that link that I sent you? I sent you a link, brdoctor.ca, if you could pull that up for me, please. Well, I'm hoping he will be able to pull this up. I did send it to you. Maybe you didn't have a chance to get to your emails today. There we go. Why I'm showing this is this just an example of what other communities are getting up to, and why this is going to be a really important conversation about what we can do. So Be Our Doctor, I am so envious of this website. I can't stand it. Oops. Yeah. Anyway, so there are some things that while council can't manage the housing shortage in the way that we would all like to, there is room for council to help shape community culture and engagement. We can start discussions and direct actions that creates a community that people would want to move to. And that's why I'm referring to this particular website. It's because look, Paradise is Calling. We make great neighbors. They've got a lot of focus on some of their arts. They talk about a lot of their community elements that are quite attractive. And that's what these new grads, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for that vibe. And that is something that is within our control. What parts of our community could be expanding? Well, that's think arts, culture, sport, events, community fun, doing things that bolster community connection, and even looking to things that are missing that we could sort of build on. So to start with, I'd like to put forward the following ideas for staff to consider. And these are easy ways to start re-engaging our community. Play and picnic, a weekday event for tots and their caregivers, somewhere like Dragonfly Splash Park. What we have is we have a whole lot of new parents who have never met one another because Rumble Bumble doesn't exist. Right? So what we're forgetting is the things that used to be avenues for our community to meet one another. So that's a really simple way that we can take one of our community assets and we can do that. Create an event, it's a one-time, picnic and play, get some bubbles, some games, 1 hour, and foster a way to help parents meet one another. And I think that that's a really simple way to create a vibe. I also look at doing like an ice cream social and Rotary Park fun night, create a pickleball round robin, disc golf, mini soccer, and then even follow the lead of Ashcroft. They're doing Celebrate the Community, where they are inviting nonprofits to set up tables to create awareness of what opportunities are there for people. We haven't done something like that. We can have maybe a bouncy castle, some music, maybe include an organization to do a barbecue. Do it 5 to 8 p.m. one night. I'm suggesting a budget of $2,000. Barbecue could be by donation. If staff felt that this was something they could act on, I suggest the final night for community youth soccer. You've already got half the town out. And then by having that ice cream social, you can easily, move people into it. And then something easy is simple. We have to start rebuilding our culture part. So art in the park, maybe tying that into our farmers market. So our recruitment and our retention strategies, we need to start now and not later. One thing I would like to suggest is that, and Mayor Blackwell alluded to it, is that lots of communities are banging the drum. What I find interesting is they're all banging different drums and not the same drum. I think Mayor Blackwell has got a good handle on the situation, and I felt that I do, in the fact that I feel that is there room to have a mayor's roundtable with MLAs where we start talking about the issues and we start talking about it cohesively? Because what we're seeing down in Victoria is mixed messages are creating mixed solutions. So how do you bring people around the table to actually start in the same direction? I share that for contemplation, not anything here, but your voice is shared well out in social media and in interview things, but you've got other counterparts who it's an isolated incident as opposed to a broader solution-based approach. So that would be something there. I also want to share that Dr. Souls was acknowledged for above and beyond with the Rural Interest Award. Thank you, Mayor Blackwell, for having written that endorsement for him. And on May the 19th is BC Family Doctor Day, and I would like to make a motion that we find a way to acknowledge our local family doctors here out of our recruitment and retention budget to the tune of $200.
Somebody want to second that motion on that last item? Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Great, thank you very much for allowing me that. I do go to be our doctor.
Yeah, Councillor Bamford, did you have a question?
I have one question for Councillor Sims, if I may. On the presentation of Gabriel Island, it said that there was an island healthcare foundation.
Yes.
I'm not sure what that is or how that would work, but my concept of foundation is it provides people who may want to contribute to that a long-term, it's a tax incentive, it's a deduction, where there's businesses are sometimes looking for a tax deduction and wondering how to do that. So is there some benefit to a foundation? Is that some long-term thing that might be
What's interesting about Gabriola is that the community of Gabriola, they actually envisioned their clinic and they built it as a community. It's a nonprofit. So we have that same opportunity with Yellowhead here. So that type of a scenario where people could donate and get a tax receipt, it exists here now, thanks to the recent changes. So that could be something that we move into the recruitment and retention conversations, but we do have it, thankfully.
Okay, thank you. Take the rest under advisement and love to see your notes on that because that was a hell of a lot. Anyways, Mr. Thomas.
Is there a motion for the $2,000 event, Councillor Sims?
Do you want to do that now or?
I would actually like to make a motion to direct staff to investigate the viability of pursuing some events, whether these suggestions or of their own, to start getting that community vibe back. And I think June is a great month to start because people start disappearing in July and August. It has to be staff capacity. So I would make the motion that it's returned to staff for consideration and deliberation. I've attached the monetary amount because I think, where is our fabulous?
She's back there in the middle.
Oh. No, our financial officer.
Oh, she's not here today.
Okay.
Sorry.
She's on vacation.
Yeah,
Okay,
the other-
just because
the
she
other
appreciates
fabulous.
having monetary
Yep,
there. So
yep.
I would make that motion. Somebody else can tidy it up.
Okay, so can you, have you?
I would like to make the motion. Yep, sorry.
I have one
Mhm.
further question. Can you forward all those ideas onto staff? Because even myself hearing it for the first time without having advanced time to think about that is a heck of a lot to take in the middle of a report. So you could forward it on to staff so that they can have a full wheel of what you're thinking about here, and I think it could be accomplished. Thank you. So make your motion.
So I move that we refer a community engagement opportunities for June to be considered and attach a budget amount of $3,500. Up to $3,500.
Up to $3,500.
Up to.
Okay. Anybody like to start a bidding war on that or second the motion?
I would just take a second.
Just second the motion. Okay. Hearing that this is a huge idea of concern, I agree with this. Anybody, any further comments or questions of Councillor Sim? Councillor Taylor.
The only question is, which budget are we taking that from? Council contingency budget or?
We have an event budget, I think that we
Okay.
did, so I would suggest it out of there. June will be, 6 months in to our budget, so I think we've got that room there.
And at
That would be
this-
my
And
suggestion.
at this point, I'm not hearing a lot of steam for a very large Canada Day event as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
If
yeah.
I have a comment on that. We can wait. Let's vote on this first.
Okay. Anything further on this one? All those in favor? Thank you. And there'll be people in the room that have work. Anything further, Councillor Sim, before I move on to Councillor Taylor? Woo, that was
Sorry,
a long
Councillor
week.
Taylor.
Councillor Taylor.
No apologies necessary. So I'll be very brief because I've had a quiet couple of weeks. I did attend the Trails Task Force meeting on May 9th, where we had a run through of all the different trails that are on the docket for the summer. Lots going on. Excited to see those come to fruition. So more to come, I'm sure. And that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you.
Nice to see you back.
Yes, yeah, nice to be back in the living. Oh. We have no committee of the whole minutes. Thank you, councilors, for your reports. Committee of the whole reports, government operations, Councillor Taylor.
Hadley Times, sip of water. Our next meeting is September 6th.
Okay, thank you. Community economic development infrastructure, Councillor Bamford.
Next meeting is June the 7th.
Parks, Rec, and Social Development is Councillor Sim. Next meeting is July the 12th. Standing committee reports, Joint Services Advisory Committee, Councillor Haring.
That is on my birthday, July 11th.
Oh, Kate on July 11th. Okay. Select committee reports, Councillor Taylor, Trails Task Force.
The next meeting is June 14th.
Okay, thank you. Community Economic Development Task Force, Councillor Frizzle. I think we've got a tentative date potentially.
We do have a tentative date. We decided that we would do the meeting that after the July meeting, so that will be July 13th.
July 13th, yes, and there's a lot to go on there, so there'll actually be some back and forth email correspondence between task force members to make some decisions. Councillor
right.
Sam, that was a question on that.
I do. I noticed that is the rotation for chairs, but because this committee is just starting to get going, I would suggest that Councillor Frizzle continue with that.
Yeah, and we've only
Or
got.
you could join with me.
But if, I mean, at this particular point in the world, if another councillor or two has an interest in it, showing up for the meeting would be great. I also believe I'll probably be on holidays for that one, so good to go. Cemetery Advisory Committee, Councillor Bamford, I know you're doing some work on this.
And our next meeting will be one day during the last week of this month.
Okay. Committee representation reports, Tourism Wells Gray. I noticed a lot in our package, but go ahead, Councillor Sim.
I think that the notes in the package really do symbolize it. They were very busy work week today. We're seeing all the gardens being planted, so for some revitalization. The mayor alluded to Canada Day. I would like to suggest that Canada Day celebrations be moved to the information center and see if we could fund it and they could buy the cupcakes and invite celebration there.
Excellent central location. I remember doing hot dogs in Canada Day there as a park contractor. It's a great way to catch the people and tourists coming through town, the locals coming through town, drive through, in and out. Great idea. Okay. You have a recommendation on that as well, on your,
I think that should do with a motion, so I move
Oh, you-
I move to direct staff to investigate that opportunity and come back with any monetary needs to support it.
liaise with Tourism Wells Gray and get her done. So you're making a motion on that. Is there a seconder on that? Hot dogs at the Canada Day cupcake, we'd take it away from. I think it's gonna be raining on Canada Day, just the way things are going. So at the beach might not be fun. Anyways, all those in favor? Okay. So it's basically talk to Tourism Wells Gray, see if there's something you can do in partnership with them. You do have a recommendation about draft board minutes still on that page under that item. If you would like to
So
move
moved.
that, thank you. Seconder on the recommendation to receive the draft minutes of April 6th and May 4th. Can somebody put up their fingers? Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. All those in favor, and that's passed. And get back to Councillor Bamford on Wells Gray Community Forest Commission. And
No meeting has been set yet, so
Yeah.
they'll certainly call in when it's needed. So,
yes, but it is exciting to know that didn't quite come out clearly in George's presentation on community forest, that they are actually starting their next 5-year cut cycle. So they can do, when the price is really good for timber, for logs, they can do a lot of heavy cutting up front to make that income and then take the chance that it'll be lower later and cut less in the future. So it's a time for a lot more potential income to come in for community forests in the next 5 years as they start that new cycle. Staff report, strategic plan. Mr. Thomas, do you have any comments on this? It's in your pile here.
Council had, or I had mentioned to council in a few meetings ago that we were working on preparing a status update on the performance of the strategic plan. In summary, there was a lot accomplished and there's a lot more to accomplish. However, there are some noteworthy items that impacted the district's overall ability to meet some of those targets set in 2019. Namely, in 2020, the onset of global pandemic, which changed everything, including resulted in the layoff of several staff and the various iterations and revisions of public health measures, which took resources in order to respond to. Overall, the district, in my opinion, performed quite well. There are some issues in some items in the strategic plan that were not completed. Some are currently ongoing, but at the back of this report, you will find a listing of the achievements of the district over the 3-year period going on 4-year period for council.
Are there any there's a lot there. There's a heck of a lot there. There's a few things on the charts list that I think would be interesting. One that I noticed, visioning and rebranding process. I think probably need to hit that one up in OCP with early in the next council term. Probably be necessary. Water metering, I'd love to get on. Are there any further thoughts from council? And it is a very impressive list. I think we should get this out there publicly. Buy space in the newspaper. Just kidding, but go ahead. Councillor Sim.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the only thing that I might ask if it was possible instead of incomplete is either pending, because I think some of those things were out of our control. So it looks like just incomplete, pending.
I'll amend the word.
Oh, thanks.
Well, language is so very troublesome. If you have any questions or comments, or you see something in there that you think is further along or needs added attention, please feel free to talk to Mr. Thomas about that, or go through him to other staff. But yes, very impressive list for sure. And considering the world we've been working under the last couple years, wow, hats off to all staff on getting this stuff done and keeping the ball rolling through COVID, etc. The next one is thing for the Healthy Living Program. There is a recommendation that the District of Clearwater enter in a year-long partnership agreement with Interior Health Authority, Healthy Communities Program in relation to promoting the health and wellness of our community citizens and utilizing the collaborative effort in developing a healthy community. There's some paperwork in there, and I will throw it to, I'm not going to be able to say your last name unless you tell me how to say it.
Bysted.
Bysted. Well, that's easy enough. It's like Jensted, but it's Bysted. Okay. Are there any questions of Ms. Bysted on this? And I'll give you a second to go through that. But we've sort of done work with Jenny Green before, but I don't
It's
know.
not there anymore.
She's not there anymore. Oh, well, that's good. There we go.
We have a new and fabulous person there.
Okay. Who's our new and fabulous person?
I would ask staff.
Okay. Who's our new and fabulous person?
Her name is Kelly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I
She
know.
is-
Even, yes.
She is fabulous.
Okay,
We're
good.
loving her.
Okay, there we go. So there, I mean, I think this is a fairly easy one, but are there any questions on this one, and or does somebody wish to make the recommendation? Okay, I don't see as bad thing in having more access to interior health at this particular point. Moved by Councillor Haring, seconded by Councillor Taylor. Okay, thank you. If there's no questions of staff, all those in favor? Sorry, going through stuff too fast, so I'll just slow down here a little bit. DCC bylaws. Everybody's favorites. Page 86 to 88. Questions of Mr. Thomas, comments from Mr. Thomas on this one? Okay, go ahead. Oh, sorry, Councillor Haring.
Yeah, so I missed the opportunity to take part in the DCC conversation before. I kind of caught up with Mayor Blackwell earlier just to get a sense of where everything's at. A question I had about DCCs that I can't seem to figure out. If someone pays to build a new house, that it pays the DCCs, let's say in the flats, and then we decide to upgrade the sewer system to the flats, we still come back to them and ask them to pay the same hookup fee anybody else in the flats would pay, correct? Like if, let's say we're going back for $15,000 to hook into a system, that whoever paid the DCC would be paying for that future investment, and then they'd also be asked to pay at the time of the upgrade. Is that correct?
That's a good question, and to avoid giving you an incorrect answer, I'd have to research that specific one.
Okay, well, yeah, I'd like an answer on that one because I'm very curious. It sounds like we're asking people to pay twice for the same service, and it's putting an additional tax on development, which I still believe DCCs are a disincentive. We should be doing a 95% rebate, not a 60. I'm fully on that. I am aware we already went through that conversation and I missed a chance to participate, but yeah, I just don't feel like DCCs are the way forward at all.
Okay. It says decision of council, but I'm not actually quite sure what decision we're supposed to be making right now.
So the request is, which direction does council want to go to with respect to collection of DCC? Currently, the bylaw allows for collection at the time of permit, issuing a building permit.
Okay.
However, the engineering firm hired has done some research, and it indicates that the best practice, even in the provincial guide from as far back as 2005, is suggesting collection at the time of subdivision.
Go ahead, Mr. Haring. I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, I don't think it should be at the time of subdivision here. I think that's going to be too big of a disincentive. If anything, permit makes sense. I'm not sure why they do it that way everywhere else, but the risk is if you don't sell units of a subdivision, you're now putting down a huge amount of money before you have any guaranteed return. You know, you could be paying for a multi-lot subdivision, millions of dollars and not have sold any lots yet.
Do you want to make that in the form of a motion that we go with at time of subdivision?
Sure, I'll make that motion, yes.
Okay. Or sorry, time of permit, sorry, yes. Further comments on that or a seconder? Question, go ahead.
I think my understanding of the proposal, what our CEO said, is that the normal practice is to have that payment at the later date. Right? Instead of upfront, it's when they actually start selling stuff. Is that not correct?
Our current practice is when a person is ready to build and they apply for a building permit, we then consider, does DCC bylaw apply? If it does, we develop a letter, we invoice them and they pay the DCC charges associated.
And at that point, they've already sold the lot, so the person's gonna have a building permit, so they've already had income coming in. So I think, but just reading the report, my understanding was it's the latest date possible when you actually collect the money.
It is the owner of the lot that pays the DCCs, so is that not correct, or is it the subdivider that pays? the
Owner of
DCC?
the lot, you're right.
Owner of the lot at time of building permit pays the DCCs. If somebody subdivides the
If it's a
lot and sells
subdivision,
that
it's
lot,
upfront.
they're not on the hook for the DCCs.
That's
It is the
correct.
current owner of the
Right.
lot.
Otherwise, it's subdivision, it's somebody's on the hook for the whole thing
It's
at
in the
once.
developer's thing, and I know
Yeah.
Doug's got his finger up there, but you
Yeah.
can't say anything unfortunately at this
yeah.
point, but I.
But
if
my
I-
understanding,
You,
that's the
you
best
can nod
practice.
frantically if I've got that correct in your head. Okay, thank you. So anyways, Bill has put in a motion, Councillor Haring has put a motion on the floor that it be DCC's be collected at point of building permits. Is there a seconder on that or further thoughts?
I just want to assure Councillor Haring that although you weren't at the meeting, you were very much at the meeting. And we really did, debate going backwards and forwards because I share your thoughts about, when we ask questions like, can we waive this for 5 years to stimulate, some interest? Can we look at some ways around it? So if they were going to be, some rental housing, co-op housing or something like this, we did a lot, but then we looked into the vision of the community. And I personally got quite excited about like the industrial park and some different areas and how to prepare for that. So I think where we landed was actually a good compromise. The better, solution will be to waive if we win the lottery. But I think we did do due diligence, and I want to say thank you for all of your advocacy over the past couple of years because we had a different conversation because of you. Yes.
Okay,
So I'll second your motion.
okay, thank you. Further discussion on the motion or a question, Councillor Bamford? Okay. So it's no longer in the province, but it is continuing our current practice. Okay. Yeah, and in 5 years down the line, when we, resolve our housing question, some other council can relook at this. Any further questions or comment? If not, all those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 18.4, Plan H grant, social connectedness. Apparently, we're all about doing good things these days with community and other communities, so First Nations. So there is a recommendation there. Are there any questions of staff? I believe Ms. Sim and Mr. Thomas brought this one forward.
I have some questions.
Go ahead, Councillor Sim.
So I love the initiative. I think it's really great. I'm hoping that eventually it weaves itself into a tourism practice where that there is a spoken language upon greeting of a hotel, and that our hotels can also feature this. One question I did have, and perhaps it was raised at the Economic Development Task Force, is around, we've got signage that we're suggesting, but we don't have signage at the entry to our communities. And I'm wondering if that has been brought up in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
So signage and wayfinding did come up as part of the discussion last night. There are a number of recommendations within the Economic Development Strategic Plan. And so some of those came forward for discussion at the task force last night. And the members who were there participated in a shortlisting session, if you will, where we looked at some of those, and some of those did make the shortcut of some activities to spend, or going forward, to spend some time on. So we will be looking at signage and wayfinding. And totally needs to be, I agree, the community needs to look at that issue.
Yes, I saw a lot of checks on that one. I think pretty much everybody checked that one off. Okay, so we still have a recommendation here that council support staff in an application of $5,000 Plan H grant to promote community connectedness by working with First Nation staff counterparts to update municipal building signage to include traditional languages as the signage in one park as assigned by council. So further on that, questions of staff on that? Not, move over to
just
seconder.
A question to staff.
Yeah.
Just, and have we reviewed this with Simp? Because if I'm wondering, because often we hear about their staff capacity.
Yeah.
But certainly when they came to the high school, there was a lot around the language. So I just wondered, like, before we jump ahead, if there's been dialogue.
Yeah, Ms. Sim.
This is all contingent on the successful grant application, whether or not our council even supports staff to apply for the grant. And then we will engage in that conversation with some First Nation and see where they're at, and work with staff counterparts to hopefully make this happen on the condition that they're in support of it.
I think it's great, and it's so good. So just wondering about that. Thanks.
Okay, further questions, comments? If not, mover and a seconder on this one. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haring, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. Moving on to bylaws. Bylaw number 262, 2022. There is a recommendation that the official community plan amendment bylaw number 262, 2022 be read for a third time. Any questions of staff, comments? If not, mover in a seconder. Moved by Councillor Haring, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. This relates to the public hearing earlier today. District of Clearwater bylaw number 262, 2022, a bylaw to amend the District of Clearwater official community plan adoption bylaw number 93. Whereas District of Clearwater Council has adopted the Clearwater official community plan adoption bylaw number 93, 2022, and whereas the Council of the District of Clearwater deems it desirable to adopt an amendment to the Clearwater official community plan bylaw number 93, 2022, and whereas the amendment is consistent with the region's regional growth strategy and waste management plan, and the amendment does not affect the district's financial plan. Now, therefore, the Council of the District of Clearwater in open meeting assembles enacts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as the District of Clearwater official community plan adoption bylaw number 93, amendment bylaw number 262, 2022. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. And then the next one is item 19.2, which is bylaw number 263, 2022. And that is to be read for a third time, which is the zoning amendment bylaw related to earlier today. Questions of staff? If not, mover and a seconder. Nice to see that moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Bamford. Nice to see that the neighbors are the neighbor is in support. I think I'm the other neighbor. So District of Clearwater bylaw number, oh, so I need a mover. You moved and seconded. So District of Clearwater bylaw number 263, 2022. A bylaw to amend District of Clearwater zoning bylaw number 133, whereas an application number RZ 2201 for amendment to zoning bylaw number 133 has been made, and whereas the desirable changes in land use have been considered, and whereas the zoning amendment conforms to the District of Clearwater official community plan, now therefore the Council of the District of Clearwater in open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as District of Clearwater zoning bylaw number 133, amendment bylaw number 263, 2022. All those in favor? Thank you. And that passes. Yay, we got through bylaws. Moving on to correspondence, information items. The Thompson Nicola Regional District Building Inspection Services, the one with the fine print. Any thoughts, comments on that one? Lot there. Good to get in. Councillor Haring and I myself were discussing how it's nice to see what's actually going on in some of those permits on this version. Letter of thanks from the Wells Gray Senior Society. BC Municipal Climate Leadership Council conference option there. I've been to one in the past in Richmond. It's quite a good conference. Unfortunately, this one's at UBC, and it looks like it'd be really hard to get transit and accommodation at. Ironically, you'd probably have to drive my monster truck in and out from UBC to attend it if I wanted to. Access Awareness Day 2022. And there's lots there on that one. We have seeing no comments from council. We have no notices of motion. We have no other business. Comments from the public. Annabelle. Yes. Yep. Dead bear is a dead bear. Yep. Yeah, we can do some reminders on that. I don't know what our bylaw is, but we'll have a conversation with, we're gonna have already at this point looking like we're gonna have a conversation with this. See, we do have, Warren is still around, and I don't know if is the other guy still? Colin and Warren are still here, but yes, I'm sure they would rather get ahead of it than be doing traps and things like that with bears, because that's a really hard process to go through and not a fun thing to do in a residential neighborhood. Anything further, Annabelle? Okay, thank you. I see Mr. Borrow has his hand up. Go ahead. That is correct. Yeah, I figure you would have caught that one. Anything further? No. The press. Does the press have any questions or comments? I'll let Mr. Thomas fire away at that one, please.
Contingent on receiving the grant, the $5,000 grant, as well as approval from Simpson First Nation staff counterparts to work through this. Yes, it does.
Yeah, we can always return a grant if Simp is absolutely not interested at this point. Simp First Nation, as you're well aware, has huge capacity issues right now. But I do know that this in the past has been something that they would like to have corrected. They did bring to us the territorial acknowledgement thing about a year and a half or so ago. So yeah. That's a big conversation. Wiley, if you want to take it on, one of the interesting things now we have Ms. Bystead here. It's when I travel elsewhere, I look at how tourism towns and towns in general do their signage, because as a first-time visitor, you go through the process of trying to get places. We, with the local eye, tend to sometimes forget that we already know how to get to all these places and fire away, because you're probably gonna, yeah.
Yeah, the mayor, of course, is right on track with this. And a lot of these recommendations, the strategic plan is on the website. So if you go to the economic development, the link is there. So if you look through to the asset development, there's all the recommendations regarding the wayfinding and signage. So we're dealing with those recommendations. And the issue really is that there is some signage, but it's not consistent. And there are lots of community assets where we have no recognition and no signage for it all. So it's really looking at how can we do some consistent branding to draw some attention to what we do have in the community.
I am glad you raised that. And you know what? You are the perfect voice because that is our front lawn and we're judged on it. And I think that because of COVID, people just haven't recognized it's been hot summers that have faded things. And yeah, just maybe for a shout out for people just to review their signage and just to see what might need to be refreshed, or is that how they want their business presented? But that's on them, on the businesses.
Yeah. Ooh, so you should start a contest on that. We have local sign makers that would be more than happy to replace the billboards. It did come up before, I think, when Councillor Sim and I were actually part of Chamber of Commerce. I did at one point threaten to guerrilla go chainsaw down signs for. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the Chamber of Commerce would be a good thing. The vast majority of those billboards are actually on private land and were placed there by business owners in conjunction with the private landowners. They don't generally fall under MOTI, but MOTI generally does not like them. So any incentive to remove the old, especially the businesses that have closed, would get cheers from a lot of people. So yeah, yeah, I would make a news story out of that. I would make a news story out of that. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's a good point. We could, I think even there's a lot of them that are within the TNRD, and I don't know necessarily that falls into our zone, especially all the ones down in Blackpool. But yes, I mean, there are a few on the Candle Creek area that could probably fall into that corridor. Thank you for the comment. Okay, so, and it would make room for some of our signs. Anyways, like, how about we mention the fact that we have a lake in the middle of town? Because there's a lot of signs for Dutch Lake Motel and stuff, but we never actually go, the lake is this way in very many places. I mean, or a beach. Yep. Then we can get back to, before we move into camera. We could go back to the Rotary idea of putting a water fountain that shoots 600 feet into 300 feet into the air with colored lights and
Moss's Pond
bubbles.
gets a lot of attention.
I think, yeah, there you go. So anyways. Okay, thank you, everybody. We do have to move into camera, so there is a recommendation that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91L of the community charter to discuss matters relating to discussions with municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives,
Just leave it on the table.
measures, and progress reports for the purpose of preparing an annual report under section 98. Can I get a mover and a seconder on that one, please? Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Taylor. We will take a 5-minute recess or so to get organized. Thank you, everybody. Oh, sorry, all those in favor. So we actually passed that. Thank you. And 5 minutes, smoke if you got them, bathroom breaks.